now hear us. So I'm here with Brad McRae from BCDC and Jessica Davenport with the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority. And this is Amy Hutzel with the Coastal Conservancy and the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority. And we are going to, we've got, I think, 11 or 12 slides. So it's a relatively quick summary of the BRRIT and of this call for projects. And then we will have time for question and answers, assuming we can get the chat function to work, which we will work on. And this webinar is being recorded, and we're going to post it on the BRRIT webpage at the Restoration Authority website. And attendees are muted. If we can't get the chat thing to function, then I'll probably shift to having it unmuted, and we'll just have to deal with people calling out questions. So a little background on the BRRIT, if I can. There we go. In June of 2016, Measure AA passed in the San Francisco Bay Area with over 70% support from voters. That, along with the Baylands Ecosystem Habitat Goals update, also in 2016, are both factors in the need to accelerate the pace and scale of wetlands restoration in San Francisco Bay. So our objectives are really to demonstrate to voters that their tax dollars are being put to good use, as well as restoring tidal marshes in the Bay by 2030 so that they are established prior to acceleration of sea level rise and can provide ongoing benefits to wildlife and communities. So one factor in the length of time it takes for projects to move from a vision to construction is the permitting process. One of many factors. The formation of the BRRIT is an attempt to increase permitting efficiencies through a dedicated team of regulators who are working collaboratively. So upon passage of Measure AA, the Bay Area Council, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and Resources Legacy Fund convened a handful of restoration practitioners and the regulatory and resource agencies to discuss permit coordination. The idea for the BRRIT came about through multiple meetings, interviews, and discussions. And I do want to make a special call out to Lori and Dave at Dudek for really helping with that process. The past year has been spent raising the necessary funds to support the BRRIT. The San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority authorized about half of the needed funds in June of 2018, and additional funders, namely the Santa Clara Valley Water District, the Bay Area Toll Authority, East Bay Regional Park District, and the State Coastal Conservancy have authorized the needed matching funds over the past year. So funding for the BRRIT is approximately $1.25 million per year. The funding is secured at this point for 5 years for the BRRIT. That repeats the funders who are involved. And then the policy and management team, and Brad will talk a bit more about this and the distinction between the BRRIT and the PMT, is supported by regulatory and resource agencies as an in-kind contribution to this effort.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, everybody. This is Brad McRae. I'm the director of the regulatory program at BCDC, and I'm one of the members of the policy and management team, along with representatives from 6 other agencies that you see here. The federal and state agencies, federal and state regulatory agencies that are involved in the BRRIT process, and including the PMT, are the Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the EPA, NOAA, Fisheries, CDFW, and BCDC. The coordinating permitting effort has 2 teams, as we've just alluded to. There's the Bay Restoration Regulatory Integration Team, which is the BRRIT, and then there's the Policy Management Team, which is the upper-level managers of each of the regulatory agencies involved. The BRRIT, as was just described by Amy, has dedicated regulatory staff, one person from each agency, all hired at approximately the same level, at a relatively high level, so that they can work somewhat autonomously, somewhat make decisions as they move along, and work together in a coordinated manner as they review projects for multi-benefit wetland restoration projects. And that coordinated review involves early consultations, pre-application meetings, site visits, meeting together to compare notes, and when they get stuck, they would identify and elevate these policy issues to the PMT. And as we all know, those policy issues do get stuck. Hold off, Amy, I'm going to do the other one too.
Yeah.
The policy and management team is there to deal with permitting issues or policy interpretations that require these upper management help. That's, from the BRRIT side, that's really what the PMT was developed for, to be a backstop to support the BRRIT at the management level for when permit applications seem perhaps stuck in an eddy due to policy interpretations or policy issues. The policy issues themselves, the problems with them, are long-standing, and we know that these policy issues, some of them, have historically proven to be problematic. It's the PMT's role to work over time to resolve those issues. Not only their role, it's also their responsibility as the part of the funding agreement with the Restoration Authority. The last point there is actually well underway and almost done, and that's managing and executing the interagency agreements. And maybe we should say those in reverse. It's really executing the agreements, which we've almost done, and managing them. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a diagram that we could probably talk for a while about. I'm going to quickly say that we all know that the permitting process has a pre-application stage and then the application stage. The pre-application stage is, of course, all of the work that happens before an application is formally submitted. And when the application is submitted, it's reviewed. And when it's complete and it's consistent with the policies and compliance with the laws and policies of all the different organizations, a permit is issued. The BRRIT's coordinated review in the pre-application stage is expected to expedite the overall permit process. In other words, the lion's share of the work for the BRRIT will happen in the pre-application process, such that when a permit application is submitted, the application will be essentially complete because so much work has been gone into that process. So the idea is that the process there on the left would be streamlined. Issues are identified in the pre-application stage, an application is submitted, everyone knows all the issues because everyone's been working together, the application is complete and the permit's issued. If it's incomplete, then there is a loop. But again, the whole point of the BRRIT coordinated review and working together and sharing each other's notes on projects as they come through the pre-application process is to expedite that portion, which will then expedite the overall process.
Great. So this is Amy again, and I'm just going to talk about the performance measures that we have set in place for the BRRIT. So these are not guaranteed time frames. I don't want anybody to leave this thinking this is definitely what you will get for your project with the BRRIT, but these are what we will be reporting to the Restoration Authority and to other funders in terms of whether or not the BRRIT is meeting their performance measures. And there could be, very good reasons that some of the performance measures are not met some of the time, and that will be described. So it's a combination of this quantitative set of performance measures as well as a qualitative explanation that we will be taking to the Restoration Authority Board annually. So I will go through these performance measures that are laid out in the agency agreements documents. At least 90% of the time, there will be a coordinated agency response letter regarding the completeness or incompleteness of permit applications sent within 30 days of the permit applications being received by the Corps. And I use the word letter, but it's actually plural, letters. At least 90% of the time, the Corps will send the Section 7 and Section 106 consultation initiation request letters within 15 days of receipt of adequate information to make a determination of request of effect, and NIMS and Fish and Wildlife Service will confirm initiation of consultation within 15 days of receipt of request letter. And then these two, I think, is, probably of most interest to people. At least 80% of the time, simple projects will be processed by all of the regulatory agencies within 120 days of receipt of the permit applications. And at least 80% of the time, complex projects will be processed within 210 days. And the difference between complex and simple projects, it kind of hinges on two things. Complex projects are defined as requiring an EIR level CEQA, EIS level NEPA, and or they may affect threatened and endangered species. Sorry, okay. Jessica, I am turning it over to you for this, the project priority list.
Thanks, Amy. So the BRRIT priority project list is the list of projects that this team will be reviewing in the coming 6 months. And basically, in order to be on this project list, your project has to be eligible for the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority and Measure AA. So this eligibility is determined by our documents that we have available on the SFBRA website, but basically, the location has to be within the 9-county Bay Area in the shoreline area. So we define that as the areas that are described in the Baylands Goals report, and those are along the shoreline, but also subtidal near the shoreline, the baylands themselves, and the creek mouths up to head of tide, and uplands adjacent to wetlands that can serve as transition habitats. And then the project types that are eligible for the Restoration Authority are voluntary habitat restoration projects in a variety of habitats, and flood management as part of a habitat project, and public access that's part of a habitat project.
That's still you. Submitting your project.
Yes, so we look forward to getting your submittals of a project by the end of the day on May 31st, this Friday. And in order to do that, we need your project to be entered into EcoAtlas, which is done through the Project Tracker tool, and to be designated as San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority eligible, and that is something that we as staff will do. And then we also will need you to email your project name as it appears in your EcoAtlas and your Project Tracker entry, and tell us your schedule of what you will need in terms of pre-application assistance or permit review. But if you don't need any services in this calendar year from BRRIT, don't submit your project at this point. We will be doing regular calls for projects. And if you do have an urgent need that arises, you can contact us at any time. So this is what the EcoAtlas website looks like. You can see circled at the top is Project Tracker. So you can just go to EcoAtlas, click on Project Tracker, and then you will get to this page which has instructions for how to enter your project. Many of you probably already have an entry in EcoAtlas for your project, but if you don't, you can sign up. You can create a new account if you don't have one yet. You can see in the bar on the left, there's a little button that says Create New Account. Or if you have one and you forgot your password, you can always get a new password. There's great instructions about how to use Project Tracker, and there's technical support for you if you need it.
So I think all of us want to get to that point in the project where we're standing on the levee, breaching and opening up diked baylands to the tide, and watching tidal restoration take effect. But we know it takes many, many years of planning, environmental compliance, design, coordination with stakeholders, and lots of work and raising funding to get to that point. The BRRIT has been designed to help reduce the amount of time needed to go from vision to reality and help us achieve regional goals for baylands to benefit wildlife and people. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions, and amazingly, it's working, and I was just looking at the wrong thing. I was looking at chat instead of questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it in. Yeah, everybody typed in okay, which was fabulous, and then I didn't see them. Type in your questions, and we will answer them. Okay, yay, so here we go. Can you share what the project tracker looks like in EcoAtlas if we need to create our project?
So we can go back to that.
Oh,
slide.
yeah. Well, we can't get to the map.
Yeah, I mean,
this is a screenshot of Project
but if
Tracker.
you just go to EcoAtlas, and then once you get if you don't have a username yet, you can't see it, but we can help you out if you get to that point and you're confused.
Yeah. So I would suggest getting on Project Tracker and EcoAtlas today or tomorrow, and taking a look. Don't put it off until the very last minute, because it could be the part of the submittal that takes the most time. And then what is the application format? Should we plan on submitting each agency's standard application forms? Yeah, do not submit your permit applications at this point. The application process, maybe she's asking about in the future. For now, all you need to do is email the name of the project and the schedule. In the future, when you actually do get to the permit application process, at this point, it is each of the agencies' forms.
That's right, Amy. Currently, the BRRIT is still being staffed. Let's start there and give you a quick update on what is happening with the hiring, and then I'll talk a little bit about the application process as it develops. The hiring process, the National Marine Fisheries Service, NOAA, has hired their BRRIT representative. BCDC, the San Francisco Bay Conservation Development Commission, has hired its BRRIT representative. The Water Board has a representative identified, and the Corps and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are close behind. I know that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I believe, held interviews last week, I believe it was. So I would expect that the BRRIT team will be formed in August, perhaps September. There will be, as you can imagine, this is a new permitting effort. These are people that haven't worked together before, and so there is going to be, I wouldn't say it's a learning curve, but it's a coordination curve, you might call it. As part of that, the application, we expect that over time the application process will change. The application is being reconsidered. We have a draft of a joint application. Some of you may remember the old JARPA, which was a sort of an interagency application that we used, or we anticipated using but didn't end up using very much, and it was because it was somewhat clunky. Well, we realized the benefit of having a joint application, and so the consultants DUDEC have been helping us. The Resources Legacy Fund has been kind enough to support DUDEC's role, helping with some of the administrative and planning functions of the BRRIT. And we're in the process of coming up with a better, more streamlined application as part of this overall process. It's not ready yet, but we expect that over the coming months we'll have more news on that.
Great. And then the next question is, I have entered project into EcoAtlas, but others cannot see. So I think that's a Jessica question. What do you think?
Yeah,
what's the process?
So once you have entered your project, I will get a notification and I will be reviewing them. And then once they are assessed as eligible, I can approve them and they will be visible. We share this process with the San Francisco Bay Joint Venture, so they also need to approve it if it's in their system. However, if they don't want it to be in their system, we have an independent system where we can make it visible. But even if it's not visible to the public, we can see it and it can go onto the list. So don't worry about it, even if it's not publicly visible. As long as you've entered it and you've told us the name, we can still find it.
Great. Okay, so Renee is asking, have you talked collectively about a midway insertion point for complex projects that have already completed a CEQA-NEPA process document, i.e. too late to add new project elements? So yeah, we recognize that not all projects are at the very beginning and are going to be able to follow this whole pre-application process. Projects are going to come to us at different points in their planning.
As a matter of fact, Renee, thanks for the question. I think that the success of the BRRIT is going to be a mix of projects. Some quote-unquote applicants or project proponents that come in very early in the process and they just want a kind of a check on the policies. Maybe they're just looking at acquiring some property, and they have maybe there's a site visit involved, but not much more than that. Sit down with the team, and then they go away for a while and come back later with more information. And at the other end of the spectrum, there's going to be folks that are coming in with projects that are have nearly a complete application ready. I think that is the dynamic place where the BRRIT wants to start from all through that whole timeline. So yes is the answer to the question. We have talked about it, and as the Restoration Authority staff sitting here selects projects that will come before the BRRIT, I think the regulatory folks are hoping that it's a mix of projects along that timeline.
Yeah, and I think I would just add to that, you know, regardless of whether you use the BRRIT or you just go through the regular regulatory process, you're going to be needing to get all your permits for a project. So your choice, the choice we are providing is to use a funded, dedicated team who are working on the set of priority projects that the authority is providing to them, and a team that is working together among the 6 state and federal regulatory agencies. So I think those are the 2 biggest selling points from my perspective about the BRRIT. Can you circulate the pre-application template? No, it is not done. So there is a draft, and the PMT has been discussing it. I think one thing we've thought about too is having a pre-application template for those projects that, as Brad was describing, that are at the very initial stages that, you know, you can't even put down like number of acres or what species are impacted, where you want to, you know, engage the BRRIT in a very early consultation and site visit, and then go back and do work.
But we understand the importance of those templates, and so we're working on them. We realize that that's a big part of this.
Yeah.
So Chris asks, Chris Barton, East Bay Regional Park Districts asks, will the BRRIT or PMT assist in getting a jurisdictional wetland determination verified by the Corps early in the process before an application is filed? Under the current system, without a Corps application filed, this can take over a year. To save time, public funding, and avoid wetland impacts, the verified JD should be done before engineering and design. This all should be done before expending funds on an application or pre-application with the BRRIT. It's a more detailed question. You know what, Chris? I'm going to say noted.
Yeah.
And again, these are, although we're poised to get to launch this, we are, these are early days. So we're going to take your question and get back to you on that one.
Yeah. Sorry, might have missed this. Is DFW hiring a BRRIT staff person?
Yes. The CDFW has a 0.5, I believe.
Approximately.
Approximately PY on that. And although their permitting role in restoration projects is not quite the same as perhaps the Water Board or BCDC or the U.S. Fish and the Army Corps of Engineers, they are part of the PMT and they are part of the BRRIT. The PMT and the BRRIT have the same members, except the PMT also includes the EPA, and the EPA, because they're not a permitting agency, they don't have a member on the BRRIT.
Yeah. Okay. What is your guidance if our project is a Measure AA funded project and ready to submit applications in the next few months? If we wait until the BRRIT staff are on board in September, we may miss the 2020 construction season.
Start working with the agencies.
Yeah.
I think it's just, start working with the agencies as you would. And I think all agencies, all regulatory agencies like early consultation. I know BCDC does. So give us a call and we'll have someone sit down with you.
Yeah.
At least at BCDC.
Yeah. And it could be that the timing works, that the BRRIT, if you're submitting permit applications in a few months, then the BRRIT very well could be fully staffed and operational when your permit applications come in. But for that initial consultation or for the pre-application discussions, I think you need to do that without the BRRIT. What would you like us to submit by May 31st? Yeah, so it's two things. One, getting the project into EcoAtlas if it's not already, and then emailing that email address, BRRIT at whatever. sfbayrestore.org. And the only things you need to send in the email are the name of the project as it exists in EcoAtlas and your proposed schedule for pre-application consultation or actual permit applications for your project. Yeah, so it can be very brief. There's no form to fill out except for the EcoAtlas.
Yeah,
field.
and just make sure to check that your project isn't already in there before you start a new entry. And sometimes they're under different names. So just look carefully for your project and talk to colleagues who may have worked on the project prior to you, see if they gave it a different name or something like that.
Yeah, great. Will all of the BRRIT members be brand new employees to each agency? Will they be aware of some of the complexities with permitting in the Bay Area?
That's another good question. The answer is it's a mix. The 6 regulatory agencies that have BRRIT representatives on the team are taking both approaches. Some agencies are hiring from the outside and some agencies are hiring from within and then backfilling that position, whatever position that person left. In all cases, though, the policy and management team which has been meeting since last September. We've met about 8 times. We meet monthly to make sure that this is a success from the start. The policy and management team understands the importance of sort of the onboarding process, making sure that the BRRIT members understand their role, their responsibilities, and also start to gel as a team as quickly as possible. So we have some ideas about how those first weeks and months look. And there's a small kind of subcommittee, if you will, or sub-team of the policy and management team that are putting together some ideas around onboarding the BRRIT in August, which is kind of exciting.
Is there anyone we could include on the BRRIT that would help navigate changes to 408 Congressional flood control levies?
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
Renee, I think that we can, again, as I told Chris, question noted, or write it down, and we'll be sure to get an answer to that.
Yeah. Okay. This is a follow-up from Chris. We are looking to get the JD verified for Coyote Hills so we can get into design. And yeah, Chris, so we received the submittal by email, and I think it's just going to be a matter of, you know, what the workload, the total workload is for the BRRIT and the set of projects that are submitted. But, you know, we're very supportive of we being the Restoration Authority and the Conservancy, very supportive of the Coyote Hills project. Can you let us know who is on the PMT? Brad from BCDC, obviously, and who else?
Let me see if I can, in my mind, go around the table.
Yeah.
Louisa from EPA, Louisa
Valiella, and Sam Ziegler from EPA.
Right. Craig Waitman from CDFW, California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Gary Stern from National Marine Fisheries Service. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Army Corps of Engineers has had a variety of, a couple of different members. Sarai has been there, Sarai Cohen has been there routinely, and just lately they had a couple of new members. They're let's see, the three, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is Jana Alfonso. And from the Water Board, it's Keith Lichten.
Yeah. Keith Lichten. Yeah, Caitlin added it.
Thanks,
Keith Lichten.
I had that before I saw that.
Yes, we did. Yeah. We didn't forget Keith. All right. Are there any other questions? This has been great. This is like...
I hope it's been great.
Yeah. From my perspective, lots of good questions. Sometimes you do webinars and nobody has a question.
Yeah, I want to say that there's a lot of trust that's been put out there by the whole restoration community, and certainly by the funders. There's a lot of people that are counting on the BRRIT to actually change the way regulatory work is done in the San Francisco Bay Area. We know that. We take it to heart, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that this works. There's a lot of money on the line. The funders have stepped up, and we really appreciate those folks that have that believe in this and believe it can work. We do, and it's just I have to tell you, from sitting on the PMT, it's a great group of people who are committed, who are not only committed to the idea, but enthusiastic. The meetings are really a wonderful experience. And Amy, you've been at a couple of them. So Renee comes in and says, has BRRIT thought about eliminating permit costs for these projects? Well, yes. We have the PMT really more than the BRRIT. The BRRIT has, you get into the terminology, the BRRIT's not yet formed. The policy and management team understands that things like monitoring and other issues are some of the very things that we have to work on to bring down permitting, or not project costs. As with regard to permitting costs and permit fees, just so you know, BCDC is in the process of amending its permit fee, or at least taking a look at amending its permit fees. And so there's an opportunity in a public forum if you want to track that on BCDC's website and weigh in on at least BCDC's fees with regard to restoration projects. You're welcome to join that conversation.
Yeah, and I think some of these permit fees it's not within the agency's purview to waive them. The permit fees can definitely be a part of the cost of a project in terms of applying for Restoration Authority grant funds for planning, permitting, construction of projects. So you can include the cost of the permit fees, within an overall application for funding to the Restoration Authority. Okay, in EcoAtlas, sometimes projects have multiple multi-million-dollar phases in different locations along the shoreline. Would it be cleaner to input each phase in Project Tracker as separate entities? I don't think you necessarily need to do that. Like if a project is a multi-phase, multi-million-dollar project in EcoAtlas, if it's in there and it's Restoration Authority eligible.
Yeah, no, we are still, it's kind of a case-by-case basis, and I did have some email exchanges about this one in particular, and I think we're going to get back to you, Roxanne, and on this one in particular for the shoreline. There's definitely pros and cons to keeping them under the same entry versus splitting them out, and we're just going to have to do it on a case-by-case. I did advocate for this one being kept together, but in some cases we will, ask you to do it separately. So yeah, let's just keep that case by case.
Yeah. And I think, I just want to echo some of what Brad said. We're very excited about setting up the BRRIT and having the funding in place for 5 years. The PMT has been meeting now for 9 months. We're getting, those PMT agencies are very actively working to staff the BRRIT. Right now, this call for projects is really to set the work plan for the BRRIT for the remainder of this calendar year. So, having the BRRIT team up and running by end of summer, and we're able to give them the list of priority projects that they'll be working on from end of summer to the end of the calendar year. We will be doing additional calls for project ideas, so don't feel like this is your only chance. So if you're you don't need to be meeting or working with the regulatory and resource agencies this calendar year. You don't need to submit. We'll do other calls. And, we are a small, nimble, flexible agency, the Restoration Authority. You can email us, at any time if there's some urgent need, and we can talk with the PMT and with the BRRIT about it. Wrap it up. So, yeah, Brad's giving me the wrap it up symbol. So it looks like that's the end of the questions. If you have very specific questions, like Chris or Renee had some very specific ones, we'll try to follow up with you individually. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay.